Cops of Reddit, what is the funniest thing you've seen someone do or say that stopped you from giving them a ticket? I was 18 and I was driving my little rust bucket around. My aunt needed a ride home from work. She was a large lady. Likely 500 pounds. So my little Chevy Spectrum had some issues hauling her. While driving I constantly had to adjust. As I kept drifting to the right. A cop pulls me over due to my erratic driving. He walks up and asks, "Son, have you been drinking?" I say no sir and gesture towards my aunt. He smiles, stifles a laugh and told me to have a good day. No ticket for me. When I was still in high school, I was on my way home from a carnival and my BF had won me a gigantic stuffed bear. As a joke, buckled it in the back seat. Got pulled over for speeding on my way home. Cop looked in my back seat. Asked why my bear was wearing a seatbelt. I said you should always wear your seatbelt in the car. Always. He chuckled. Told me to slow down. And walked away. Back in high school I got pulled over with a friend doing 10 miles per hour over in a 25 at night. Being night. A cop had his spotlight shining through the car. In through the back window and out the windshield. So my buddy and I started making shadow puppets as the cop was running my license. I guess we caught him on a good night because he came back laughing. Gave my license back. Told me to slow down. And sent me on my way. Cop hum shadow puppets. Probably gang signs. Better just shoot them to be safe. AWW hell. It's getting late. I'll just let them go and let street justice take care of them. A friend of mine keeps a picture of a cop standing with her at a baseball game on her dashboard. When they ask about it she says it's her dad. I've never seen it fail. So one of my friends who goes to another college was at a party when it got popped. The police questioned a lot of the people there. Including him. He just flashed them a get out of jail free card. That's right. The same one from Monopoly. The cop didn't hand down any punishment and he was in the clear. My father pulled over a teenager on his way to prom for running a stop sign and gave him the option to either take the ticket or go to the stop sign. Hug it. And promise never to do it again. Please tell me your father had a dash cam. I was on my way home from the hospital after having a bowel series done to determine why I was having so much abdominal pain. I wasn't feeling too well when I left the hospital and I got on the highway. I immediately felt the urge to crap like never before. I floored it looking for an exit before I crapped my pants. Next thing I see a state trooper. I pull over. And as I lean over to get my insurance I see the release documents from the hospital and they state that I may get the sudden urge to evacuate my bowels. Trooper comes to my window, sees me sweating and bent over. He asks me why I was in such a hurry. I just hand him the release documents and say I gotta go. He takes one look at it. Hands it back and say, "Son, the closet place is next exit, get there and go. Don't want you shitting your pants." Couldn't believe he was human and understanding. I got the next exit and destroyed a Jack in the Box bathroom. Drove the speed limit the whole way home. I got out of getting a speeding ticket because my friends and I were going to Flavor Flav's now defunct Friend Chicken place. It was an hour away from where we lived and we wanted to check it out since it had been all over the news. The cop pulled me over and asked where we were headed. Once we told him, he told us to slow down and have fun. Sniff. A friend from college stated that when a female cop asked him to do the breathalyzer he played the trumpet on it as a joke and passed it. She then became determined to give him a ticket, checking everything including things like tire thread depth. Tread. Not thread. Unless he has some really strange tires. Ugh. A few months back I was pulled over for rolling through a stop sign. I have generalized anxiety and the way that my body reacts to any sort of confrontation is beyond humiliating. So this officer is simply going through a very civil routine, taking my information, explaining what I did, etc. And I'm sweating, shaking, and stuttering when I try to talk. And for some unknown, godforsaken reason I spit out the words I feel like I have a kilo under the car. It was one of those moments where as the words were coming out of my mouth, time slowed down and I was filled with horror and regret. But he just started laughing and laughing. Gave me a "you need to see someone about that" anxiety. And let me off the hook with a warning. I have this too. I tried to hand the cop my credit card instead of ID. Thought I was going to puke. Dad has a military ID. In my city most cops are retired veterans. So if my dad gets pulled over they just have a conversation about when and where they served. Tip for service members. When not near a military area, on leave or traveling. For instance, always pull the military ID out. And let them correct you that they need to see your driver's license. Oops. Just so used to showing the other one. Not a cop. But my friend said he got out of a speeding ticket on Halloween. He was dressed up as Maverick from Top Gun for a party, and when the cop came up to his window, the cop said Maverick and my friend looked him up and down and said Goose. And the cop just let him go. Goose? I thought you died. No, you died. I held your body when we bailed. I stayed with you in the helicopter. Stop right there, Mav. I lived. The coma was deep. But I woke up the next day when Carol visited. We made a plan. We had a lot of debt and God knows the comp for a Kia is huge. But Carol and Scott still live in. I'm gay, Mav. That volleyball game had a lasting impact on me. A divorce was in the works weeks before the accident. Everything worked out so well. Iceman lives with me. We have a dachshund named Charlie. I got pulled over in college and I had the box from a pregnancy test that I took a few days ago on the seat next to me. I knew I was FK'd because I was doing at least 15 miles per hour over the limit. And the cop approached. I just blurted out, "I just found out I'm pregnant." He was a middle-aged dude and he just looked completely freaked out, dumbfounded. He took my license and whatnot back to his car and then brought it back and told me to pull over if I'm upset when I drive. And let me go. I think this was especially effective since I was clearly young, unmarried, and apparently poor. My car had duct tape on it. I laughed maniacally as I sped off. I hope you're a guy. And I tease your baby. My ex-fiancé registered sign and his best friend were high and driving around town when they got pulled over for speeding. Cop approaches window. Ex rolls it down. Tries to act normal. Cop says, "Do you know?" with a lilt in his voice and pauses. Before X can stop himself, he says, "The Muffin Man?" Cop responds, "The Muffin Man?" X says, "The Muffin Man." The cop laughed and let them off with a warning. Probably one of my favorite stories to this day. Car filled with rowdy teenagers. Gets pulled over. I'm in the passenger seat. My buddy is driving. With 3 friends in the back. He's nervous. And begins to sweat. As the officer steps out of his cruiser and begins to walk up to our car. I rip the top off a bottle of water. Dump it in the driver's crotch. And fiercely whisper, "You just pissed your pants," and shove the bottle under the seat as the officer gets to the window. Officer leans down. And begins to say, "Do you know why I pulled you off?" And just stops. Then he looks at the driver, who's nervous and trying to keep a straight face. Looks at the rest of us. And just says, "Slow down," and walks back to his cruiser. I still can't believe that worked. That is great. I, too, have done this to get out of a ticket. But some advice. Do not use vodka to wet your crotch. That's a guaranteed way to get yourself a field test. My dad, who is a doctor but was not on call or heading to the hospital, showed his hospital ID and yelled, "It's okay. I'm a doctor." And sped off. I'm going to try this. I'll show my calculator and say, "It's okay. I'm an engineer." Then speed off. I think confidently speeding off is the key to confusing the police. I got this. Family is full of police officers. My mom gets pulled over for speeding. My mom immediately says that her husband, my dad, is a cop. The CHP officer looks at my mom and proceeds to give her a ticket. I thought it was hilarious. Edit. Good. I hate when people pull that entitled bullshit. I had a cop pull me over for speeding in a school zone. He told me I was going 32 in a 20. I said, oh. Come on. He said, come here and look at the readout. He picked up the gun and showed me the screen. It was blank. I said, it doesn't say anything. Sure enough. He had pulled the plug when he picked it up. He just laughed and said, have a nice day. Not a cop. But one of my friends was caught speeding and he had some chicken nuggets in his car. My friend stuffed some chicken in his mouth and pretended to be choking on it. When the officer walked up to his car, he was stunned and gave my friend the Heimlich maneuver. After the officer saved him, my friend explained that he was only speeding because he was trying to get some help. The officer let him off the hook. Fast forward to 2 weeks later and the same officer is given an honor badge for helping save my friend's life. I can't make this shit up. I got out of a ticket by saying I was speeding because my GF was late for work, which was true. They told me to bring her there and followed me to her workplace, then let me off with a warning. It was a scary drive. Another time I was going 160 zone and they let me go after I said it's just because I was sleepy and wanted to go to bed soon. That sounds like a bad argument. They said they didn't want to bother good people like us, they were just concerned for my security. I took my 2 years old and 4 years old out to pick up breakfast. And on the way home I was pulled over for speeding. Both kids were crying their eyes out and my 4 years old was wailing. Please don't take my mommy to jail. Please. I handed the cop my license, registration and insurance, and asked if he'd mind sticking his head in the back window and let them know that he wasn't going to haul me off to jail. He was totally cool about it, calmed them both down, and explained that he was just asking me to drive more slowly. My 4 years old, face dripping with snot and tears, held up our Dunkin' Donuts box and said, "Thank you. Do you want my donuts?" TLDR. My kid basically said, "Good cop. Want a donut?" at a traffic stop. I got pulled over for passing 2 cars on the right because they were pacing each other at 10 under in the left 2 lanes. The cop asked me if I was late to something. I said my dad's birthday party. He asked if I had any proof of that. I lifted a box from the seat next to me that was wrapped in brown paper that said "Happy Birthday Dad" and Sharpie big letters across the top. He nodded, gave me a warning, and I was on my way. I wasn't actually late for a party. I just hid a quarter pound of weed as a birthday present. My father pulled over some girl going 20 miles per hour over the speed limit. He found her rather attractive and wound up asking her out. She was engaged at the time, but thinking she could get out of the ticket, agreed to go on the date. Month later my mom, breaks it up with her fiance, gets engaged to my father. They've been married over 35 years. Edit. Also the only ticket she ever had to pay. She didn't get out of it. I've heard of some girls that have used the excuse of a feminine emergency to get out of speeding tickets. Works every time. I did that. And the cop called his female partner over and she gave me a tampon and let me into the closed park, out in the middle of nowhere, to use the outhouse and wash my pants. The cop was green around the gills because there was blood everywhere and the female cop laughed her ass off at him. No ticket. I was actually pulled over once going 100 in a 70. As soon as I saw the cop I pulled over to the side of the road. I was already in park a half mile up before he even pulled out into traffic. He asked me if I knew how fast I was going. And I said fast enough to outrun you if I tried. He laughed, said probably, and told me to slow down. He walked away smiling and no ticket was given. Edit. Sorry, not an officer. Just a story about a cool encounter with one. I was going 93 in a 55 and met a cop going the opposite direction. I immediately pulled over and waited for him to get turned around. He gave me a ticket for 65 in a 55. A guy I know got pulled over for speeding on the highway in Ontario. The member of Ontario's finest happened to be a good-looking young lady. She asked him, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And he said, "Well, I don't think it was for my good looks." Apparently she got a good laugh out of it. And while she didn't let him off completely, he got ticketed for going 10 over. Instead of what he was actually doing, which was more like 35 or 40 over. Underage. At the time, friends and I had a small campfire at a local park and had a couple of open bottles of booze laying around. Cop rolled up. We offered him a s'more. He ate with us. Then told us to put the fire out and go home. I'm going to be that guy and tell a story that is relevant, but not fitting to the actual question. Please skip this comment if this behavior annoys you. My ex-girlfriend's uncle was very drunk driving home one night and was pulled over and asked to step out of the car. The police officer had him go through the basic field sobriety testing and her uncle didn't do so well. When they got to the ABCs part, the officer said, "Do you think you're sober enough to say the alphabet?" He looked at the officer and said, "A, B, C, D, U." Ian turned around. The cop started laughing so hard he couldn't cuff her uncle right away. He arrested him because he was clearly too drunk to drive, but her uncle said the officer told everyone the story while checking him into jail for the night. I didn't get out of a ticket, but I was walking through the parking lot of a country concert and a cop drove by blasting because I got high. Thought it was absolutely hilarious. I'm not a cop and this isn't my story, but I saw this in a similar thread a long time ago. So a cop pulls up behind a guy stopped at a red light. Without waiting for the green, the car lurched forward and stopped partway through the intersection and then went all the way through. Of course. The cop turns on his lights and pulls him over. The cop comes up to his window and asks a few obvious questions. Could the driver see him pull up behind him? Yes. Then why did he go through the intersection? The answer was that the man driving the car had an erection in an uncomfortable position. As he tried to adjust himself, he accidentally hit the gas and went through. Cop laughs. No ticket. TL. Dr. I'm bad at telling third-hand stories. TL. Dr. I'm bad at telling third-leg stories. Am I right? Not a cop, but I outmaneuvered the cops once. I was driving 104 on the highway in a 60 zone when I went under a bridge. And there was a cop that immediately pulled out after me. Mind you, I was in the far left lane of a 3-lane highway at that zone. And traffic was starting to thicken. So I slowed down to 70 and changed lanes in front of a semi. Then changed lanes to the far right lane, which was an exit only lane, and slowed down even more using the semi as a shield. Anyways, I took the exit and watched the cop speed past as I took the long route home that day. Not me, but one of my teachers. This is nursing school. She is a maternity nurse when not at the college. She was explaining this one class. So I know I have a speeding problem. But it was late and not busy, and then of course I get pulled over. Great. Well, I can't get another ticket, so I explained to the officer. It was a really hard day at the hospital. We had a couple bad deliveries and the babies didn't make it, so I was hurrying home because I really wanted to just give my kids a hug and see them. What the hell is an officer going to say to that? Edit. I used words weird or missed them completely and stuff. I do that a lot. That speeding endangers not only your life but the other people on the road as well. We don't need any more dead babies or parents in this world, so here is a ticket to remind you not to endanger other people's children with speeding just so you can hug yours. How about slow down? Or else they won't have anyone to come home to them. One of my favorite Snopes. Com stories. I kinda want to try it sometime. A woman is driving down the highway. The highway was originally in New York, but in the retellings I read both took place in Pennsylvania. The woman notices a police car behind her with his lights on and she starts to get nervous, planning what she will say when the officer pulls her over. The officer approaches her vehicle and before he demands her license and registration, she chimes in, "I know. You pulled me over to invite me to the policeman's ball." To which he replies, "I'm a state trooper. Mom." We don't have balls. Comma upon realizing what he has said. He clears his throat, tips his hat and walks back to his car.